closing deals to opening minds. This is the Mr. D podcast. I'm Omar Andreasen, and we're about to get real about real estate, success, and the grit that it takes to build your best life. Let's dive on in. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Mr. Deed podcast show. And today I am delighted to have Lauren Alexis Klein with us today. She's actually the co-founder and CEO of Flourish Law Group. It's actually a boutique estate planning and elder law firm serving clients across Fort Lauderdale and St. Petersburg, Florida. With more than 11 years of experience in estate and tax planning, Lauren creates customized wills, trusts, probate strategies, and Medicaid solutions. Her mission to help families from the middle class to the ultra wealthy secure their legacies and protect their future through thoughtful legal planning. Lauren, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I think it's interesting whenever people try. I was almost an attorney, and my best friend at the time said, "Don't do it." Actually, he just retired from law at 35 years old.
Nice.
I'm done. That's it. I'm done. He's to say, he like, just stick with real estate, man. He goes, it's so much better for you. He goes, just do that. He goes, but you know what? My sister's an attorney, so I can always
nice.
lean into her if I need anything.
Yeah, it depends on the area of law. Some areas are more fun, like what we do, I think is a lot more enjoyable than, say, litigation.
I said litigation, or I heard is family law one of the worst ones to get into?
Listen, it takes a very special person to thrive as a family law attorney because you're dealing with people at the worst moments in their life. You're dealing with child custody situations. That I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, that one sounds really tough. There's a lot of emotions to deal with on that one, and I can only imagine. But let's get into it. So, want to jump into some points here. Excuse me. And I want to talk about the estate planning essentials, and especially this one I get all the time coming through when it comes through our real estate company. I'm like, listen, there's a couple attorneys we can steer you to, and now we have another one. I'm like, just reach out because don't even want to get involved in that. I know a little bit. I said, but I don't know enough. You need to speak to an attorney. So what's the biggest misconception you would say that people have about estate planning?
There's so many, but I think the one that we hear probably every single day is that they think a will avoids probate, which is it's not true. A will just says, if there is a probate, who gets your stuff? Who gets your assets? That's really, when it comes to assets, at least, that's all that a will does. It does other important things, like that's if you have minor children, that's where you would name guardians or your minor kiddos. But I think that's the biggest one that we see, and then the biggest opportunity to educate that we really experience with either our clients or just in our community.
So would you say, so when it comes, you said something that kind of struck a chord with me. When it comes to, you said a will directs people to do certain things, but would a trust be more powerful than a will, or you need those both in tangent?
Yes. So you do need both. Most people should have both a last will and testament and a revocable trust. The trust is really going to be the main document that governs who gets your assets and how they get your assets. And it's an incredible tool to avoid the probate process. And we can get into exactly what probate is. But for most individuals, they're going to want to have that trust. They're going to want to put assets into the trust, like bank accounts, brokerage accounts, things like that, because that is one of the ways to avoid probate. It's one of the ways to make sure that our spouse, our children, our other loved ones that we want to give assets to when we pass. It's one of the best ways to give it to them for a number of reasons that we can get into. But I would say that's really where most people should get started. What is a will? What is a trust? What do I actually need? And that's going to be based on your family circumstances, your assets, the ages of your beneficiaries. But that's a great place to start.
Okay. I had a client just recently and he said, hey, listen, I spoke to my accountant And because he has 20 properties over here in the United States. He goes, I spoke to my accountant and he said that I should create every single property in an LLC and that would protect me 100%. And I said, nah, I don't know about all that. I said, but what I do know is that you need to pick up the phone now and speak to a real estate attorney because I more than likely would think, yes, probably the LLCs will be some kind of shield for you. But at the same time, I think if you have a trust, that might be even a bigger shield. So, what would you advise somebody if they said, "Hey, listen, I put all my properties in LLC, so I'm protected, I'm good. I don't need no trust or will." What would be
Yeah,
your
so we
response?
let's talk about this. This is a really great question, and we have a lot of real estate investor clients, so we're having these conversations all the time. Okay. So I'll give you what like the typical structure is for a real estate investor. Let's just go with someone single individual, they have 20 properties, and maybe they bought everything outright, and now they're like, "Oh, okay, what if someone sues me? What should I do? I want to make sure I give this to my kids in the right way." So they're looking at it like from a very big picture. Probably they're going to want to have a trust at the very top of the structure, and it's probably going to be a revocable trust to start with. That means I can change it, I can amend it. It's very easy. I'm still the taxpayer at the top, so there's no additional like tax returns that are needed for with respect to the trust. So very straightforward, foundational estate planning document. What that trust does is it says who gets the assets and how. Do I want the real estate portfolio to stay in trust for my kids? Maybe I want the trustee to sell it all because I don't want my kids to have to manage it. I just want them to get the cash. Whatever you want, the trust can say what's going to happen. But what the trust does not do, oh, and it avoids probate. But what the trust does not do is it does not protect you from creditors because it is a revocable trust, meaning because I can change it, I can amend it, I can put assets in, I can take assets out. A creditor can look through that trust because I can look through that trust very easily. So still important, but you're not going to get that creditor protection piece. That's where the LLCs, the limited liability companies, come into play. So we said, okay, trust at the top, probably going to be a revocable trust. Then probably the next level is going to be the holding LLC or the master LLC. And then that will own underneath it each of the properties, ideally in their own LLCs. That's why they're in their own little creditor protected bubbles. If you really start to get a large portfolio, maybe you don't want to have an LLC for each property because it does get a little burdensome. You have to file the annual report. You need to get an operating agreement. It's not crazy, but some people say, I don't want to. I'd rather take a little bit of a chance and put two properties in one LLC. There's some tax reasons you also may not want to do that, but I don't want to get into the tax weeds. Limited liability companies are a great way to get creditor protection. If you have a single member, so you have one owner, you'll get some creditor protection in Florida, at least for everyone who's listening in Florida. If you have a multi-member LLC, so two or more members, that's going to give you the best creditor protection you can get with an LLC. It's different in other states, but in Florida, if you can have a multi-member LLC, either you and a spouse, you and a partner, maybe you and an irrevocable trust that you've created. But that's going to be like the kind of the gold standard structure, I would say.
Okay, love that. Great advice. All right, you said you want to get into probate. So, probate challenges and misunderstandings. Why do so many families avoid discussing probate until it's too late?
Yeah, so there's a statistic out there that says about 30% of Americans have an estate plan, but we review existing estate plans all week long. And I would say probably the statistic is more like 10% of Americans have an effective estate plan, probably even less. And one of the reasons so many estate plans are ineffective is they're often just a will. There's no probate avoidance. So we're slammed with probates and we're in the midst of the start of this great wealth transfer. It's just going to become absolutely insane. So let's talk about what a probate is, why we want to avoid it, and what those misconceptions are.
Okay.
So probate is essentially a process. Let's say I pass away and I have a bank account. It's in my individual name. I never named a beneficiary like on a transfer on death form. I don't have a joint account holder, and I never put it into my revocable trust because my lawyer didn't tell me to do that. Or they did, but they didn't help me. So I'm busy. I didn't do it. If I pass away and that bank account is in my individual name, in order for it to get to my spouse or my kids or whoever I want it to go to, They have to go to court. They have to hire a lawyer. In Florida, you typically are required to hire a lawyer. You can't be pro se. They have to file everything before a judge. A judge has to review everything. There's going to be delays in distributions of assets anywhere between 6 months to 2 years. Everything becomes public information. And while you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, you're now dealing with this like huge administrative task. And we have so many probates right now, and I see the family members and they're just like, man, like this sucks. It sucks. And like I said, if there's a will, then at least the will is saying who gets it. And if you don't have a will, you're called intestate. Your estate is intestate, meaning whatever Florida law says, that's who gets your assets. So an estate plan is really defaulting out of whatever the default law in Florida is, typically spouse, children, then parents, then siblings. Every state has their own rules. It's not something you really want to deal with. You don't want all your information becoming public. And we're all trying to create generational wealth, right? If you have probates happening at each generation, you're losing money in legal fees, in
Hmm.
time. And so you're actually negatively impacting your family from a financial perspective. So I think the biggest misconception is people just don't really know what it is. They don't really know how to avoid it. And usually what happens is someone passes away, they have to go through the process, and they're like, shoot, I don't ever want my spouse or my kids or my whoever to go through this. It's awful.
So listening to all this, if I'm on the other side, or no, even me now, I'm like, this is overwhelming. How long would you say, Omar, let's say if you came in with nothing, like no will, no trust, no LLC setup, how long can this whole setup take? Is it weeks? Is it hours? Is it months?
Yeah. So I want to touch on the overwhelming piece really quick, and then let's talk about timing.
Okay.
I think the reason that so many of us don't take action when it comes to business or when it comes to estate planning or talking about our money is our brain is usually trying to keep us safe. And so if something seems foreign or it seems overwhelming or confusing, we often just avoid. And I think that is why so few Americans have an estate plan. Lack of information. And then once we get the information, we're like, oh my God, I do you not know that I have like businesses and kids and life and I'm taking care of my mom. And it just feels overwhelming, which is why, please, if anyone takes anything from this podcast episode, don't do DIY. Don't go onto these online softwares. Don't try to print
Mm,
something out because it's not that overwhelming if you work with a professional who knows your family, who knows your goals, and will draft and execute a plan that works to get you to that point. That is so much of what we do. As a good estate planning attorneys, our job is to educate, to understand the family, to provide the strategy, and then to actually make it happen. Like we call ourselves professional nudgers. We're like, yes, we have a high like level of knowledge on this, but we also hold your hand. We make sure we get this done because it's hard to get it done. So I would say, first of all, if anyone feels overwhelmed, I think that's incredibly normal, but we have to do better when it comes to anything, money, business, estate planning, which estate planning is just it's an extension of your financial health. We have to cut through the noise. We have to surround ourselves with professionals who can get the job done for us and who will stay with us as we continue to build wealth, real estate portfolio, whatever it is. Timing, a straightforward foundational estate plan. It's going to take about 2 months or so. It's not anything crazy because, especially if you're meeting with a good lawyer who's going to have actual meetings with you and discuss things rather than just send you worksheets or questionnaires that you're like, that's why I'm hiring a lawyer. I don't know what a personal representative is. I don't know who to choose. The process can take longer, especially if the client is busy, and sometimes we're waiting on info from the clients, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's so important to get in place, and the sooner you do it, the sooner you'll be done and you can just maintain it and add to it. Keep adding to it, which is great. Like I have this trust, I can continue to add new properties, new LLCs. You don't have to update the trust agreement. You're just deeding or transferring property or taking title to the property directly in the trust, which is pretty freaking cool. It's pretty cool. That's an abundance mindset right there.
no, I love that. Now, let's say someone wants to use your office and your services. Okay. And let's say they're located in Central Florida. Can all this be done online or on video, or no, you have to go either to our Tampa office or our office over in South Florida.
I would say like 90% of our meetings are all done virtually, even if someone lives down the street from me, because we're all busy and it's just so much nicer. I think the big silver lining to COVID was we realized technology and Zoom and Teams are our friend. Most of our clients, they're like, we're not coming to your office. We can do this all via Zoom, and it allows us to do more meetings. It allows us to serve them without sitting in, South Florida traffic. So
Hmm.
no, it can all be done virtually. Oftentimes we'll do the signing ceremony in one of our offices, but we serve clients across the state. So if they're not near us, we just do a virtual signing. We have a wonderful remote online notary company that we work with. There's very specific rules that have to be followed for the documents to be executed under the formalities of Florida law. So we have clients who have signed their estate plan from Africa. Like you can be anywhere in the world.
Okay, love that. All right, so we covered kind of the probate challenges and misunderstandings. Now, I want to dive into trust and wills for every family type. What would you say? What's the difference between a will and a trust, and who needs which?
Yeah. I love this question because it really ties to going back to the main misconception we see. So let's say, like a good estate planning attorney is going to analyze, okay, your age, your assets, your family, and your goals, and then make a recommendation. Typically, if we're recommending, oh, you don't really need a trust, and people come in, they're like, I need a trust, and then I look at everything, I'm like, no, we'll do a trust for you, but I don't think you need one. Let's go through a typical family or individual who does not need a trust. Let's start there. Let's say someone comes in, they're in their 70s, all their children are well into adulthood, and there's no grandchildren. So they're like, we don't have to worry because minor children cannot inherit assets outright. So a trust really should be put in place if you have minor kids or even minor grandkids. Well, let's say like there's no minor kids, everyone's an adult. The assets are, let's say, a condo on Boynton Beach, a couple bank accounts, and an IRA. Pretty straightforward. You can avoid probate on all of those assets without a trust. With a home in Florida, we have enhanced life estate deeds, which basically says if I pass away, who gets this property? Without a probate, you can undo it if you want to sell the property down the road or anything like that. So that tool is sometimes people call it a ladybird deed. That tool is
Mm.
amazing, especially if someone doesn't need a trust. And then on their bank accounts and other accounts, they can just name beneficiaries. They're not worried about their kids getting in trust. They're like, my kids are older. There's no divorce risk or anything like that. I'm not worried about estate tax. That's the select type of person who a will only would make sense for because we're avoiding probate through other mechanisms. But most individuals, whether it's because of the nature of their assets, the age of their children, their goals and their planning, and if we're talking about like your clients that have like large real estate portfolios, you're going to need a trust. You want to have a trust, most likely. So what the trust does, going back to what we said before, is you can put assets into it, like an LLC with all the underlying LLCs and all your underlying real estate, and all of that passes privately to the beneficiaries per the terms of the trust without that probate. So that is huge. Let's go back to the example where I'm leaving it in trust for my children. By keeping it in trust for them and not giving it to them outright, I'm doing a couple of things for them. I'm giving them a prenuptial agreement. So let's go back to that 20 house real estate portfolio or 20 door real estate portfolio. If they don't own it in their names and a creditor comes after them, even putting aside the LLCs, let's say they move some of it into a bank account in their individual name. Creditors can now come after them. Ex-spouses can now be entitled to those funds. By keeping assets in that trust, you are creating a prenuptial agreement for them, which is huge because the LLCs would protect from like an outside creditor, but would not to protect from an ex-spouse. Another thing that it does is, let's say your children are young and you want to name someone else to be the trustee to administer the trust for on their behalf. That's a really big reason that a lot of our clients want assets to stay in trust for their children, either because they're younger or they're not going to be ready to manage these assets. Estate tax comes into play as well. We get this question all the time. So in the US right now, if you're a US citizen or a long-term resident, you can give away or die with up to $14 million in 2025 per spouse. And if you're lucky enough to live in Florida, we don't have a state level estate tax. So for our clients who exceed the 14 million or double that if they're married, then we want to make sure that assets are in irrevocable trusts. So either we're creating an irrevocable trust as part of their plan, or when they pass away, that revocable trust we talked about, it becomes irrevocable. And then you're going to have anything in that portfolio in that trust never enters your children's estate tax base. It is an incredible planning technique, especially because it's 14 million right now, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If there's a change in administration in the future, it is going to go back down. I can almost guarantee that without having my tax crystal ball out.
Wow. Okay. You threw a lot of us out. Careful what you ask, huh?
This is
Um,
why you need a professional. Don't ever, anyone listening, don't try to do this on your own. There's so many great estate planning attorneys across the country. Find someone good. If you need someone, ask us. We have a whole network because it's so important. It truly is a part of your financial health. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Now, why would you say people try to do it on their own or do the online? Is it because maybe they're like, it's cheaper? Or maybe they're like, oh, you know what? I can do this on my own. What if the clientele that you see go that way and then all of a sudden call you afterwards? Maybe they saw, maybe something happened
Mhm.
to them or whatnot. Can you give us an explanation of, you know what? Perfect example. This is what we had.
Yeah, I think we're all fee sensitive, of course. And I think any of us who are smart, we don't want to overpay for something. So I think people expect that you can just go ahead and use one of these softwares and it will be fine. I think people oftentimes, like clients say to us all the time, oh, this should take like a minute. It's really easy. And I'm like, things take time. We need to dive into your goals and your wishes and your assets and make sure that we are drafting everything in a way that will actually work. I think when people go do DIY, they don't know what they don't know, right? Like even if they're a lawyer, if they don't do estate planning, they don't understand the ins and outs and how things impact their family. And oftentimes, because we do probates where people did DIY, either they messed it up, so it was even worse than if they had just had a probate because now things are screwed up. We've seen people accidentally disinherit their children. Like
Mhm.
that was luckily someone who had not passed away. She just came to us to give us, we do diagnostic reviews of people's estate plans, and we're like, did you mean to disinherit your daughter? Because you also named her as a personal representative. So you're making her do all the work, but she's not getting any assets. And she's, oh my gosh, no, I didn't mean to do that. So that was one of the really bad ones that we saw. But luckily, she hadn't passed away yet. We've seen people where they do the documents, but they don't sign them or they don't sign them properly. We've seen people, because remember, like I said, you can do a beneficiary designation on an account that overrides your estate plan. So we want to make sure a good attorney is going to say, okay, let's look at everything and make sure everything is going into the bucket that you want it to. So there's too many pitfalls without having a professional. So yeah, I think it comes down to fees. And I think that as estate planning attorneys, we just need to do a better job of educating on the importance of what we do. And I think that will really help people get over that hump. Because a good financial plan or a good estate plan, excuse me, is especially if it's a trust plan, it's probably going to start around 45 to $5,000. If you're going with someone who will actually spend the time, that can feel like a lot of money. But for the amount of money that you're saving your family in the long run and the peace of mind that you're giving yourself, it's like pennies on the dollar. I kid you not.
Yeah, no, definitely. So here's a question for you, and especially when it comes to couples when they have to have that money talk. Now, I know you said that already in one of the trusts, you almost have whatchamacallit built in
Like a prenup for your
a
kids.
prenup for the kids almost.
Yeah.
So, how can lawyers almost encourage couples to open up about their financial realities when it comes to having the conversation of money talk?
Yeah, money talks can feel really hard and really scary and overwhelming. It's like the number one reason marriages typically don't work
Hmm.
is money. And we all come to into relationships, whether it's marriages or business relationships or raising our kids, we all have money stories. It's interesting. Most clients, when they come to us, I just got off a consult just before this recording, and almost everyone's like, I don't have much. That's how they start out. And they're like, but I have a house and I have a 401k and I have a pension, I have life insurance. I'm like, so your children, your spouse slash your children would be inheriting like $3 million. That's not nothing. So I think it's just getting comfortable with being comfortable with your money. It's figuring out, okay, how do I feel about money? What is my money story? What are my limiting beliefs around money? And how can I get more comfortable discussing this with my spouse? And every couple's going to be different. Some couples have everything together jointly. Some people keep things separate. Sometimes it's blended families where there's different children from different prior relationships. Sometimes, especially as our generation is getting married later, sometimes people are coming into the marriage with a lot of assets. And so they're talking about prenups. I think it's just getting the conversation started and saying, if your spouse or your partner is like hesitant, babe, this is what we need to do to make sure that we are acting like the wealthy individuals that we want to be. We can't ignore these conversations. And it's cool because sometimes when clients go through the process with us, they're like, wow, this actually made us so much stronger because it forced us to lay out all of our assets, to understand our net worth, to understand how the assets would flow if something happened to one of us or both of us. So it is just getting started. And I just think that we all have to remember that we are worthy of wealth and we are worthy of having an estate plan that works or having a financial plan that works. Or if we want to be real estate investors, like we just have to take the first step.
Love that. All right, two more questions. And this one, I'm hoping you had some experience with. I'm sure you have because it's just a little bit of a drama. So, have you ever had somebody that they come in and then all of a sudden a will reveals a secret that can completely rock a family? Have you had to deal with anything like that before?
Maybe once or twice over over the years. Yes.
That's it?
Yes.
Once or twice?
Once or twice this week. Yes.
When it
Yeah.
comes to that, what strategies help preserve relationships through something like that? That can be a complete legal chaos, correct?
It can tear families apart.
Hmm.
Truly, truly. So I'll give you a few different examples and what can be done, if anything. So the first example, they didn't end up hiring us because there was nothing we could do. An adult son, called us earlier this year and said, my father just passed away. He was married to my stepmom and they had I love you wills. So I love you wills or I love you trust, or basically I give you everything and you give me everything. And so they had each named this adult son slash stepson as the second beneficiary. So it was spouse and then son or stepson, depending on whose document you were looking at. So dad dies, pretty much everything was in his name, like a $2 million house in Boca, a bank account, a brokerage account, all this stuff. And he calls us and he says, okay, so now my stepmom has inherited everything outright. There's no trust. There's nothing that's protecting those assets. And she's changing her will. She's writing me out of the will. What can I do? And we said, does she have a capacity issue? Is she being unduly influenced? And I'll talk about those concepts in a moment. And he said, no, she hated my dad and she hates me. And it was all of dad's assets. And I said, unfortunately, there is nothing we can do. He's passed away. His will left her everything in her individual name. That is now on her balance sheet. That is her asset. There is literally nothing you can do about it. And so I don't know how it ended up. It didn't sound like it was going to end up good. But that one has really stuck with me, especially as, hey, make sure the estate plan meets the goals. Like, I think if the lawyer had said to the dad, have you thought through how these assets are going to get to your son ultimately, right? Because the dad and the stepmom are in their 70s. Have you thought this through? I think if a good lawyer, I don't know if the lawyer did that, if he might have been like, oh, like maybe I want to give my son something at the beginning, or maybe in a trust for stepmom. So it goes to the son ultimately. So that's one example. That was an awful one that has just stuck with me. And I use that all the time, especially if it's a blended family. Please get your estate plan because things like that happen all the time. Another situation that we've seen a number of times is either a child has been completely written out intentionally, or the parents divided the assets amongst the children, which is common. Maybe one children's going to get the business because they've been involved, and then the other children are going to get cash or other things to make up the difference. But if the parents never talked about that with the children and now they're gone and the children are grappling with why did mom and dad
Mm.
give you this and why did they give me that? And oh my gosh, the business is actually worth X when they thought it was going to be worth Y, and there's no equalization clause that makes sure everyone's getting the same amount. Maybe you have three siblings who were super close and loved each other, and now they've been thrown into this situation where money and inheritance tears them apart. We have seen that so many times. And I think one of the ways to avoid that is talking to your children about what you're doing and why while you're still alive, so they have a heads up. Maybe they can tell you their thoughts and they can at least understand your point of view.
I like that. Now that must, man, I feel sorry for that. I, that one son that
I know.
stepmom took care of. Yeah, more than likely that was probably the stepmom's attorney, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Or
Tough
just what
one.
happens, a lot of estate planning attorneys just do very cookie cutter planning. They don't explain and they
Mm.
just say, oh, you don't need to trust. And why would the client know? How would they know? How would they know?
You know what? That just brings up another good subject here. All right, let's say you already have an estate plan already done. Would you recommend, let's say, like we do? All right, Omar, you know what? Why don't you just let me review that estate plan for you to see if there's any holes and to see if there's any recommendations I can make. Do you guys offer that service?
We do. And we usually find so many things when we look at existing estate plans. Either the documents are awful or they're just super outdated, or sometimes the documents are excellent, amazing, but there's been no retitling of assets. Like we get a
Mm.
lot of clients who come down from the Northeast, like New York, New Jersey, and so they want to update their documents from that state to Florida. And we had a client come in earlier this year worth about 35 million. We reviewed the documents. We're like, the documents are good. We are going to amend and restate them for Florida law. Make sure you're showing New Jersey. I'm not a New Jersey income tax resident anymore. So estate planning is a part of if you're moving, especially from a taxable state that tax income tax to Florida doesn't. But then we started looking at all their assets, $35 million worth of them. And we're like, about 90% of your assets are probate assets. The attorney never helped you retitle bank accounts and brokerage accounts and real estate into your trusts. So if you had passed away, this probate in Florida, we can bill flat rate, hourly, or a percentage. That would have been such an incredibly expensive probate that
Mm.
probably that lawyer was hoping they would get in if they were still in New Jersey. So, yeah, it's we do that all the time and we often uncover a lot of stuff.
Interesting. All right, last question. Now, if you can just leave just one D behind, one action, mindset, or even a lesson for anyone listening today, professional, entrepreneur, what would it be?
Let's see. I'm going to leave them with two. One, just get started, take action, reach out to a couple estate planning attorneys, ask your friends, ask your family, ask your loved ones, and schedule some consults with a couple attorneys. It's dating. Find someone that you're comfortable with and that understands you and your goals and your family. Probably want someone who has a tax LLM like I do. It's not always necessary, but it's helpful, especially if you have a big real estate portfolio or if you're taxable. So schedule a couple consults. That would be my number one tip. And then number two, I can send you, we're going to be doing a masterclass in December. I think it's the
Ooh,
16th.
okay.
Totally free for any, you can, anyone all over the country can join. And that way, when they go to these attorneys, let's say they're not in Florida or they have someone that they want to work with in Florida already, they can go in feeling empowered and feeling like I already have kind of a game plan of what I want to do and I'm informed, so it will be a much more effective meeting.
Love that. Love that. Definitely make sure you let us know about the planning. I will love definitely put that link on there for all the listeners to jump on. Lauren, thank you so much. Guys, listen, we have all of Lauren's contact details on below on the comment notes. So please make sure that you reach out to Lauren if you have any questions and also join her free class. Come on now. Once again, I want to thank everybody for listening and watching the Mr. Deed podcast show. So remember, actions actually build empires. Stay focused, stay hungry. Sometimes you just got to give life a little bit of whammo. I'm Omar Andreasen. Thank you so much for tuning into the Mr. Deeds podcast show. Stay blessed.
This is Omar Andreasen signing off and reminding you that success in real estate and in life is built one deed at a time. Until next time, keep it real, stay sharp, and don't forget to give life a big whammo and keep moving forward.